Are you someone who is always tired, who can never get things done, who's always in a messy environment, always in drama, and severely overweight or just overweight, and you are not eating healthy, you're not exercising, you're lazy, and you're procrastinating? If you fall into this category, which most of us do, and so have I, and I still do sometimes, I'm going to talk to you guys about energy leaks. And I'm going to give you 6 signs that you have some energy leaks in your life. Energy leaks, to me, are things or people or environments that suck your energy, they drain your energy, and they show up physically. So for me personally, when I look at people and I see how they are showing up in the world, they have messy hair, clothes all over the place, they're just not put together, or they have a terrible attitude, or they're always frantic, or someone on the opposite end who never tries anything, who's always fearful, who doesn't commit to anything, they're never on time. Those signs tell me that there is a leakage in their life. They tell me that something is happening beneath the surface that they haven't addressed. So for example, when I see someone who's overweight, I don't just assume like, oh, they eat too much and they don't work out. I used to, but since I've been on this journey of learning about human behavior, human nature, and understanding spirituality, I now know that most of the time, pretty much, and even the idea of overeating and not exercising, the reason why people do those things is to solve another problem that's happening internally. So the book that I'm reading, called The Body Keeps a Score, it specifically talks about this when it comes to people who are overweight. A lot of times people turn to eating as a comfort, the same way people turn to drugs, alcohol, partying, overconsumption, consuming too much of materialism, spending a lot of money, being in toxic relationships. People go to those things because they provide them with some sort of comfort. So when I see that, I automatically now think like, they have something going on in their life that they haven't addressed. So energy leaks are ways to tell that you're not in alignment and that you are giving your energy to something that isn't serving you and it's showing up physically. So I have 6 categories that I want to kind of break down and just give an example in each category of something that can be an energy leak in your life. So first, we want to talk about physical / your environment. So as I mentioned before, being overweight. When someone is overweight, the energy that they're putting into being overweight is something that they're not even conscious of. So for example, someone who's overweight, the energy leak is them being overweight. So how that will look is maybe they don't want to take time into cooking, and they're spending more energy into eating out, whether that's hanging out with people on a daily basis, or maybe they're just being lazy. Being lazy is the energy leak. And I said it wrong, but being overweight is the physical representation of the energy leak. So overweight, let's just say the energy leak is that you're lazy, you're procrastinating, and you don't believe in yourself. You don't believe that you can lose the weight, that you can stick to a routine. So you're putting so much energy into being, in that lacking mindset, in that negative mindset, and in that fearful mindset. You spend more energy worrying about what you can't do versus using that energy to pour into what you can do and doing the work that it takes to lose the weight and become an overall healthy person. A messy environment. That is another energy leak. So when I see someone in a messy space, it tells me that inside there's a lot of chaos going on. So maybe they're overthinking about things that's going on in their life. They're too busy with work. They're saying yes to too many things. They're stressed out with, worrying about so many things that's going on in their life, not just work, but maybe family, financials, not reaching goals. So when you see someone in a messy environment, or if you have a messy environment, whether that's your workspace, whether that's, your home space, whatever it is, your car, that is an energy leak. So when you go to your car right now, if there's a lot of food and trash and stuff in your car, know that there's something going on internally that you need to address. Another thing, and some people may take this, the wrong way, but not being put together. You know, you're showing up in public with your hair all over your head. Like I said earlier, your clothes are not put together. Not saying you got to match or look a certain way, but, you know, you just look like you don't care how you show up in the world. How you show up in the world tells people a lot. That's why when people see homeless people, you know, they run away from them, because the energy that that person is emitting is contagious and is not something that you want to be around. It's not the sense of them asking you for money. It's the energy that they're emitting based on, you know, how they look and how they're showing up in the world. So when I see people, even like my coworkers, when they show up and, you know, their hair doesn't look good and they just look all over the place, they're stressed out, they're overworking themselves, they're maybe not getting enough sleep. And so when you don't show up as your best self, which is why I always talk about like becoming the highest version of you and becoming the best version of yourself. When you don't show up as that person, it tells people things. Not to say that you should care what people say, but if you want to receive certain things, if you want abundance, if you want financial freedom, if you want, you know, a life that is worth living, you have to show up a certain way and you have to attract certain things. You don't want to chase everything that you want in life. You want things to come to you easily. And so, but if you're showing up, you know, in a negative mindset, you're fearful, you know, you don't care about how you present yourself in the world, you're not going to receive what you're looking for. I literally saw a video on TikTok. This lady works in the airport. And she was saying that you really do have to go to the airport with a really nice outfit, because you never know who you're going to meet in the airport. At the airport, I live in Atlanta, and pretty much every time I go to the airport, I see like some type of celebrity. I don't care about seeing celebrities in the airport, but I see them. But like if you're somebody who may be trying to get into that scene, you know, and you show up looking a hot mess, they're not going to look at you. They're not going to pay you any attention. I'm sorry, but that's just the world that we live in. You know, it's sad to say, but like our physical world, our physicalities and how we show up, it really does matter to some degree. But like if you show up at the airport and like your hair's all over the place, you just look like you don't care how you look, and you just, you know, throw on whatever you could throw on, you're not going to be attracting certain type of people, certain type of conversations, whatever it is that can really fulfill your spirit and fulfill the energy that you're looking for. So how you show up in the world, if you know, are not pouring into at least like your hair and making sure that when you go to work, you know, everything is buckled correctly, tucked correctly, you know, your clothes actually fit. If you don't pour into those things, that tells you that there's a leakage there. Maybe you have a lack of confidence. Maybe you can't afford to buy decent clothes, so maybe that tells you you need to work on your finances. So your physical environment does tell you what is leaking when it comes to your energy. So your environment, like I said, your space, if it's clean, if it's tidy, versus if it's not, if it's messy, if there's clutter, you know, it's not organized, that gives a sign that there is something going on internally that needs to be addressed. Okay, next one is mental. So if you are having a lot of brain fog and you're always overthinking, there's a leakage there. So brain fog could be because of a number of things, whether that's unhealthy eating, you know, you can't concentrate because you're always overstimulated. Maybe you're consuming too much content, you're watching too much TV, you're not reading at all. And then overthinking, you go through analysis paralysis, where like if things aren't perfect, you don't even try it, and you're always thinking about the worst or what could happen instead of just taking action. Those are energy leaks. If you're someone who's, I know people love to, I'm an overthinker. Okay, that's not cute anymore. Like that's not cool anymore. Yes, it's great to, you know, think about things. I'm a huge advocate for making wise decisions and making smart decisions and thinking before speaking and thinking before doing. But there's a difference between that and overthinking to the point where you're not making decisions, you're not making things happen in your life, and you're not taking action. So if you're someone who spends a lot of energy into thinking a lot about things, and then you're also having a lot of brain fog, just know that there's an energy leak there. So if you go to work and you can't stay focused, if you can't concentrate, That also can mean that you're not getting enough sleep at night. So one thing that is going on in your life is correlated to another thing in your life. So how you, like, the main point here is like, there are physical signs, and even though mental is not physical, but like the idea of brain fog and overthinking shows up physically. But what shows up physically is correlated to what's happening on the inside. So that's the whole point of this whole video. And they are energy leaks. So you're spending too much time doing things that are actually draining your energy, and it's showing up physically. So everything that I'm telling you are signs that you have energy leaks. I just wanted to make sure I clarify that. So the brain fog, overthinking are physical signs, right? But they're pointing to something that's internal. So overthinking, your energy is being drained because you're thinking too much about a certain thing or a certain outcome. Brain fog, that is showing up physically because you're probably not getting enough sleep. You're over consuming things that you don't need to be consuming. You're not reading. You're not using your brain for high level skills. You're only using it. You're basically not using your brain, and you're spending too much time on things that don't matter. And you're probably eating a lot of highly processed foods that's affecting your gut health, which is in turn affecting your brain health, leading to brain fog. So that is kind of what the mental signs will look like. Okay, now we have emotional signs that you have energy leaks. So we talked about our physical / environment. We talked about mental signs. Now we're going to talk about emotional signs. Number one, and this is one that I definitely experienced. Having a bad attitude, even to this day, is something that I'm continuously working on. Having a bad attitude is not cute. I've said that in previous videos, and it's not attractive, and it's not okay, especially for my black women. And I say that because we have this stigma of being a mad black woman, so I just have to address that because I see it in my work and I see it in my family. We do have bad attitudes. I mean, it is what it is. Not all of us, but a lot of us have really bad attitudes, and we react so negatively to the smallest things. So, emotional signs. You have a bad attitude, you're easily triggered, and you react before think. You are not being the watcher or observer of the thinker. You're just reacting, and you don't care how it comes out. And then also having low self-esteem and being a victim. That's also something that I experienced. I went through this whole phase when I was in college where I didn't talk to my parents. I didn't talk to my dad. I was a victim. Like, I treated myself like a victim, not knowing that that's what I was doing. But I felt like everything was happening to me and not for me. I felt like nobody supported me. And I felt like the cards that I was dealt weren't in my favor. And so I focused so much on those things that they weren't allowing me to make progress and to work on my self-development. Now, granted, going through that helped me to realize, like, okay, I'm not a victim. I do have power. I don't need to allow other people or things in life to have power over me. I'm grateful for that journey. But I'm telling you that being a victim is a emotional sign that there is an energy leak. So if you show up in the world and you're always, I can't believe this happened to me. So-and-so did this to me. So-and-so did that to me. I can't get a job. These jobs are crazy. My teachers are always doing this. Da, da, da. It's always what everybody else is doing and not what you're doing. There's an energy leak there. You don't want to take accountability. You don't want to be real with yourself. You don't want to admit that you might be the problem. Same thing with the bad attitude. Having a bad attitude is actually a lot deeper than we think. I believe that having a bad attitude, especially if we want to talk about just like black culture and black families, I think it just stems from what our ancestors dealt with. And I think it just has become normalized throughout the generations. And yes, granted, there is and was a lot to be angry about, but in this day and age, in the present moment, when you are dealing with people, when you're dealing with your partners, with your children, with your family, having a bad attitude is not the way to solve problems. You know, reacting with sarcasm and and killing people with revenge, or not wanting to use that whole kill people with kindness thing, it has a lot of power over you that you don't even recognize. So like, even like to this day, like while I'm at work, like people are so rude. People are rude and they're very entitled. Certain groups of people are very entitled. And I catch myself wanting to get an attitude with them so quick, like so quick. And I always have to keep telling myself, kill them with kindness, kill them with kindness. Do not feed into their energy. Do not allow yourself to have energy leaks and pour into that whole negative idea, right? And so when you have a bad attitude, just know that you're not addressing things that are happening internally or things that you may have dealt with in the past, whether that's from trauma, whether that's, from relationships, whether that's just on the job or just like everyday life, even in traffic. Like the traffic is crazy and it's so easy to like feed into other people's negative energy, blowing the horns, trying to potentially cause car wrecks, because they do that here in Atlanta. Like it's easy to fall into that energy and allow that to be something that has power over you. But you have so much more power when you can control yourself, control your emotions, and show up as your best self and not be so easily triggered. That's one of my number one things, is not letting everything trigger me. And that takes a lot of deep work, a lot of inner work, and understanding why I react to things a certain way and what it means to be triggered. And that takes a lot of work. It's real inner work. But once you go through that journey and you learn and, you start to practice some better habits and strategies for dealing with stress, you won't have that leak of always having a bad attitude. So yes, having a bad attitude and then like being a victim and having low self-esteem, these are all physical or, signs that show up that lets me know and other people know that there is something going on a deeper side that hasn't been addressed. So yes, low self-esteem is another one. If you're somebody who's not confident, you don't believe in your abilities, you don't trust yourself to do new things, you only want to do what's comfortable, there's a leakage there that needs to be addressed. So we talked about physical environment, we talked about emotional, we talked about mental. Now we're going to talk about behavior. So this is a huge one because really all of these are behaviors, but I want to get into some specifics on behavior things that show up as energy leaks. People pleasing. People pleasing was a huge one for me and I still struggle with it. But people pleasing shows up and you always saying yes. You say yes to family, to work, to your partner, and you never make time for yourself. That drains your energy. All these things drain your energy. So the bad attitude, that's draining your energy. Having low self-esteem and being a victim, that drains your energy. People pleasing drains your energy. It keeps you away from doing what you need to do to take care of yourself and your family. You're always looking to make other people happy at the cost of your own happiness and peace. Vices. Y'all, I don't play about vices. This is like number one for me because America normalizes vices. And specifically, I will just mention them. I won't go into detail, but food can be a vice. Overeating, which is why I mentioned that earlier as a physical sign of energy leaks. Vices are physical signs of energy leaks. Someone who's always eating, they're using it to comfort themselves. Alcohol, always using it for comfort. Drugs, comfort, peace, calmness, you're using that to fix another problem that you think is fixing, but it's actually making it worse. TV shows. America loves TV shows, loves to get you hooked. I hate when I meet people or I'm talking to people and, girl, what show you watching right now? I don't want to talk about TV shows. I don't. I watch my little shows. Like right now, SWAT came out with a new season. I'm watching it here and there. Am I sitting and binge watching that during my free time? No, I am not. I love Vampire Diaries, How to Get Away with Murder, Criminal Minds. Like, don't get me wrong, I like TV shows, but it becomes a vice when you use it to replace what you need to be actually addressing. And that's something that I experienced. Like, before and after work in the past, like, When I know that I needed to be working on my content, working on my business, I would be more likely to throw on a TV show than to do the work that I need to do. So that's an energy leak. It's sucking my energy. It's draining my energy. I'm using that to fulfill what I really need to do. When you, a lot of people use consumerism to comfort what's going on the inside, and it drains your account and it drains your energy. So when I see someone who overspends, I don't just assume that they love to shop and they love clothes. No, I think and I know that there's something going on internally that is not being addressed. So overspending is the leakage. So like I said, these are all signs, right? Everything that we're talking about are signs that you have energy leaks. There are signs that you don't want to address what's going on the inside of you. They're draining your energy. Instead of you doing this, the real work, you being in alignment with your higher self, you're doing this instead, and it's draining your energy. So we talked about our physical selves and our environment, our emotional signs, mental signs. We talked about some behavioral signs, relational signs that there are energy leaks. Being in toxic/chaotic relationships. Now, this actually gets a lot deeper than what I'm going to touch on, but trauma bonding is a real thing. And a lot of people do it because they want to be comfortable. You know, people stay in relationships for years dealing with abuse, toxicity out of comfort because that's what they know, that's what their body and brains are used to. That's draining your energy. It's keeping you away from that husband, from that wife, first of all, from that dream family, from that dream relationship. But it's also draining your ability to be focused on what you need to be focused on. It might even pour into that brain fog that we mentioned when we talked about mental signs of energy leaks. So when I see people that are in toxic relationships, people that will not get out of a relationship that is harming them, it doesn't have to be just physically, but mentally and emotionally, I know that there is an energy leak going on in their life. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust that they will be okay outside of their relationship. They don't believe that they can find someone else outside of that person. They don't believe that they are worthy. They don't believe that God has someone and something better for them. So instead of trying something new and pouring energy into a new relationship and being open to what God has for them, they would rather drain their energy and be with somebody who may be using them for money. You know, they're just using them for sex, like whatever it is. Like, they would rather be with that person than let them go and move on with their life. And that will drain your energy. So toxic relationships are not just, you know, something as simple as, you know, what people make it seem. Everyone tries to normalize it, and, you know, they love to talk about men not being trash and like that's just what we have to deal with. No, that's not okay. You don't have to deal with women or men who are not good for you. You deserve someone who values you and treats you with respect. So just know that if you are in a toxic relationship, whether it's with family, and like with family, that can be a big one because you're dealing with family members just because of that title of you being my mom and dad or my sister or my brother or my cousin. Listen, I don't care who it is. I will not talk to a family member if they are toxic, if they're not treating me right, if they're using me, you know, whatever the case may be. I'm literally not talking to a family member right now because they be trying to play me and they try to treat me like I'm the problem when I know that I'm not. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but in this situation that happened, they flipped it on me. And I'm not the crazy one. Everyone's around me has affirmed and validated that I'm not the crazy person. I love that person to death, but I'm not going to allow people to drain my energy. Instead of me focusing on that relationship and allowing that person to continue to use and abuse me, I cut off communication and I love them from a distance. And that's how you have to deal with toxic relationships with family, romantic relationships. Leave them. Simple. Just leave them. You know, once you build the courage to. The only step is to leave them. So I've been saying 6 signs throughout this video, but there are 5 signs that I specifically wanted to touch on. So it was physical and environment, mental, emotional, relational, and behavioral. And these energy leaks take up your time and your emotion. So how they show up physically is a representation of how you are feeling on the inside and the fact that you haven't addressed what's going on. And they're keeping you from being in alignment with what you truly want to do. So how to stop some of these energy leaks and how to address them. You want to become aware of them and determine which ones are taking the most of your energy. So for example, if you're using alcohol to cope with your everyday struggles, right? You may be drinking every single day. That's an energy leak. So once you become aware of that as one of your leakages, maybe you can top that as maybe the top 3 out of, say you have 5 that you can be aware of. Out of those 5, alcohol may be number 1 or 2, right? So to address that, you can make progress towards it by saying, okay, I only drink 2 or 3 days a week instead of 7 days a week. Or whenever I'm upset, I'm going to do this instead of picking up a bottle. You're going to try something new, whether it's write it out, maybe you phone a friend that you trust, maybe you go for a walk or you go to the gym, but you find healthier ways to deal with these issues that you're struggling with internally instead of turning to these other things that are draining your energy even more. So here are some things that I do in my personal life to prevent me from having energy leaks. So I like to do a cleaning task before I go to bed. Even if I get off work late, I like to do at least one thing. So that may be cleaning my living room space, that may be taking the dishes out the dishwasher or putting some in the dishwasher, wiping off the counter. But that just keeps my space from being, dirty and, cluttered and just stuff being all over the place. I love to just keep my space clean because when I see that my house is clean, it just reaffirms that my mental is doing better than I think, even if it's not, but it just keeps me in a good mood and keeps me, operating at a higher level. I write daily to-do lists. This keeps me from being late to certain things, helps me be aware of what I need to accomplish that day, whether that's with work, content, things around the house, errands I need to run, whatever it is. I love to write daily to-do lists to keep me from procrastinating because procrastination is another sign of an energy leak. You don't want to do what needs to be done. So you just procrastinate and you do other things like watch TV, phone a friend, whatever the case may be. So I write daily to-do lists. Another thing is I've been practicing saying no without explanation. So like if I'm at work, if they ask me to stay, I say no without explaining myself. If someone asks me to do something that I don't want to do, I just say, hey, no, I can't make it, and just leave it at that. But people pleasing was one of my biggest things, and I always would over explain myself, and I'm learning to not do that, and I've done really well at it the past few months, and that's something that I'm really proud of. So another thing, like I mentioned earlier, is my attitude. And that's another thing that was an energy leak in my life. I noticed that me being triggered so easily is not a good thing, and it's not cute, and it's not normal. When I say normal, I just mean we've normalized things that shouldn't be normalized, and it's something that I believe bad attitudes have been normalized, and it's not okay or healthy to just have bad attitudes for no reason. So one thing that I do regularly is recite God's word that talks about being slow to anger and loving everyone, because at the end of the day, we're all sitting here to love. And so just remembering that my husband is not against me, and even with random people out there, I just accept that it's not me that they're against. Maybe it's something that they have going on personally and they're just letting it out on me, not taking it personal and just being humble and, just giving them grace. It helps me to just not be so quick to get triggered by whatever they said or did. So reflecting on God's word regularly really helps me with these energy leaks when it comes to behavior and attitude, and also emotional signs too. Like I said, being triggered easily, bad attitude, the way I communicate things are all emotional things. So just using God's word as a way to build principles that are healthy and actually just teaching me to love all and treat everyone as if the way I want to be treated. So if I'm having a bad day, and I may say something wrong. I want that person to give me the same grace that I should give them. And then the biggest thing for me lately within the past couple of weeks is limiting my screen time. So I'm no longer on TikTok. I post TikTok content, but TikTok has an app called TikTok Studio where I can just post content and I don't have to scroll like any type of timelines or For You pages, which is great. So I've been using that to post content instead of going on TikTok, because once I post, I go straight to my For You page and I start scrolling. When I'm bored, I scroll. And then with Instagram, I'm not really a scroller on Instagram. I do like to post on my story on there, but Instagram is not as entertaining to me because my Instagram is all about health and wellness, which I love. So I go on there for inspiration all the time. So I've been limiting my screen time just to keep that from being an energy leak, because the more you're spending time on social media and scrolling and not addressing what needs to be going on in your life, that's an energy leak. So these are just some of the things that I have done to, decrease the energy leaks in my life and decrease the amount of things that are draining my energy. So just to recap, energy leaks are things that are draining your energy and are not in alignment with who you want to be or where you want to go in life. So my camera overheated, but I really wanted to say a couple of things before I end this video. So like I said, energy leaks are things in your life that drain your energy and they keep you away from doing the things that you want to do, that keep you in alignment with being your best or highest self. And so they show up physically. So like I said, some examples are when you're overweight, that's a sign that maybe you are procrastinating on some things, you have low self-worth, you don't trust yourself, and those are things that you are pouring more energy into versus pouring energy into going to the gym, eating healthy, doing positive affirmations, things of that nature. When you are overly emotional or you have a bad attitude, you're easily triggered. Those are physical signs that there's something going on inside of you that you haven't addressed, and it's an energy leak. Where you're someone who's over consuming, you're buying a lot of crap just because you want to, you have a cluttered space because you're buying too many things, you're hoarding things. There's an energy leak there that consumption is feeding something within inside of you. It's providing you with comfort and it's draining your energy. So you just want to be aware of these signs and you want to address them as soon as possible so that you can pour more energy into becoming the best version of you, the healthiest version of you, and being that person who can really inspire others to do better in life. You're not allowing so many things of this physical world to control you. And you're also taking control of yourself and your thoughts and your emotions. You're not going to be perfect at it. Like I said, these are things that I still deal with and sometimes struggle with, and I'm learning to overcome. And so just know that this journey is not easy, but once you become aware, it's life-changing, and it can also help other people. When people come to you and tell you some things that they're doing, you can say, hey, well, maybe instead of this, do this. Or, oh, like you're having a bad day, let's go for a walk. But you're starting to, train their brains to seek healthier ways to deal with their issues versus turning to these things that really drain their energy. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you can take some of the things that I talked about and apply them to your lives slowly but surely. And thank you so much for being here. I will see you guys in my next video.